So we have the latest price data, and that is from January 6th right here. And before we look at the market, I'm going to explain a few changes to this chart, which I think is pretty interesting. And that is this row down here. This row actually shows the grand total of all the prices in each of these columns. So let's take the January 6th price, for example. All of these numbers right here are actually summed up down here. And even though I only have 10 entries here, the sum down here is actually the grand total of all 16,520 cards that are really in this chart. And those are all the cards from generation 7 to 9, because as I mentioned last week, 7 to 9 tend to be the most accurate price data because there's a lot more liquidity there. This means that the total realized value for all Gen 6 to 9, from all Gen 7 to 9 for January 6th is $73,318.23. So that means if you are going to complete every single set from Gen 7 to Gen 9, it would take you above 73,000 in order to complete all those sets. Now, if we look over here at this number, which is below this, what in the world does this mean? It's a bit different from last week. It says Delta versus December 30th. This is basically the change in value. Same thing as I showed last week, but labeled slightly differently. It's the change in value from today's most current price, which would be January 6th, and last week's captured data, which was on December 30th. So what is that change? It's going to be in this column here. And then the grand total down here, as I had highlighted earlier, this is again going to be the sum of all these changes for all 16,000 plus entries. So if we do that, the number actually comes out to negative $20.29. That means for Gen 7 to 9, the entire market for that actually moved negative. Now, this is more of a give or take number because the prices shown in this chart aren't going to be the exact number that you will see in every single market out there. Again, we're not looking for the precise price of cards. We're really just looking for general trend. And if it says negative $20.29, well, that's really peanuts for a market that is $73,318. So even though it may have a negative, don't panic, basically. We also have this delta over here, delta versus December 26th. These were the prices captured before December 30th right here. And if we add all these numbers up, it came to a grand total of negative $196.94, which is a greater negative than today's negative. That means the difference in price from today, January 6th, and December 26th, the difference between those dates was almost negative $200. So if we compared this grand total with this grand total, that means the market has moved a bit up in the past week and a half or so. So that is how we can use grand total to understand what's going on in the market. So that is all I need to explain, I think. Let's get into the actual data right here. In terms of the biggest market movers, it seems like Umbreon EX, the most coveted card from Prismatic, was the one that moved the most at $123.05. Granted, the price today is about $950, but that is totally arbitrary. If we look at TCG Player, it's about $950. The latest purchases from January 6th was $948 and $945. But if we're looking at this price chart here, it has it at about $993 on average. But if we were to look at specific purchases, and this website captures data from eBay, if we look at specific purchases, it can sell for $1,600 about. So that $950 amount, that is, again, totally arbitrary. And this tends to happen with a lot of high-priced cards, where there's so much wiggle room for sellers to price their cards, even though the cards that they're selling are probably the same condition. Some sellers are willing to part with a lower price and others want a higher price. And so the data captured is, not entirely what you'll see in reality. Well, sometimes you'll see it, but again, super arbitrary. Let's look at another one for fun. This one is $1,075 and near mint. The price really does vary for these really expensive cards. So even though in this chart, Umbreon moved $100, in reality, Umbreon really didn't move at all. It's pretty stagnant. I don't know if Umbreon is going to go further up or if it's going to dip down. It's kind of hard for me to imagine anyone trying to buy this card for $1,600 plus, especially when we have cards like this now in play, Mega Charizard, and we are going to get into this in a bit, but who knows? If Pokemon is going to come out with another Eevee special set, then probably it will push the price up a little bit, but we really can't tell how far this is going to go. Nonetheless, Umbreon has cemented itself as one of the few Pokemon that have become permanent chases. In my opinion, just because Umbreon is really popular, everyone loves the evolutions. And speaking of Umbreon, we have Umbreon VMAX on the top 10 as well. And this is the Umbreon from Evolving Skies. However, the caveat is that it only moved $9. It is sitting at $1,700, and given that it's already a $1,700 card, that's peanuts. That market too is pretty stagnant. So here's the Umbreon VMAX right here. Some recent purchases were at $1,200, $1,300, $1,000, $1,800. That's insane. But if we look at the chart here, definitely the trend is a steady upward trend like that. Umbreon VMAX, I believe, is a pretty good long-term hold, because obviously in the short term you will have dips like this dip or that dip or even today's dip over here. But long term, this is a pretty good hold, regardless of what the price is today, except for the fact that not very many people can shell out $1,700 for one of these cards. Now, before I go to the rest of the cards in this chart, let's go to the star of the show from last week, which was Mega Charizard, of course. Now, Mega Charizard is part of this chart, of course. It is part of Gen 7 to 9. However, when I changed the sorting for the Delta, the most recent one, we see Charizard over here as being the biggest loser between last week's price capture and this week's price capture. It moved a negative $47, almost negative 48. Last week it was at about $485. Today it's at about $438. And again, not saying that is what the card really is worth to every single person. However, I don't think this is particularly accurate, because it looks like maybe there were some shenanigans going on. If we look at TCG Player, for example, and view more data, for some reason on January 6th, there were a good number of purchases, and I don't know, it's more than 10. And some of the earliest purchases right here were for near mint hollow Mega Charizards, but only at $300. 333, another 333, 318, 318, and then 312. And one of them even had two right here. Now, I don't know what happened. Maybe somebody or several somebodies, listed them for the wrong price, or they were just starting out in TCG Player and wanted good ratings, which sometimes happens. Or maybe somebody wanted to drive the price down a little bit. I don't know. This is just funky, especially for near mint hollows, because after those we had more purchases, but they were in the $500, which seems reasonable. We had a 519, 550, 500, and then we had an LP hollow, which was for 509. And then the last prices captured was $381. Two of them were sold, and they were MP. So 381 is probably, reasonable for that. So yeah, I think Mega Charizard is still a $500 card in general. It is still a liquid card. Definitely a card that a lot of people believe are worth keeping, but there were just some strange price anomalies. I think at this moment, Mega Charizard might be, evening out, stabilizing after that huge buying spree that we saw from last week. Yeah, there were actually so many cards sold last week that the TCG inventory actually ran out. So it actually said sold out for a short time, and then more Mega Charizards came in later on. Now, the rest of these cards that are on this chart, all of them are $200 and above, and all of these price movements in comparison to their prices aren't very significant. So for example, the second card is Magikarp Wailord GX, the alt art. It is priced at around $1,000. Supposedly it didn't really move very much at all because both of these deltas are the same number, $45. But just comparing the $45 with $1,000, that's nothing. Mewtwo Mew GX, the secret rare one. And I believe that was one of the cards that I showed last week too. It is this card right here from Unified Minds. The 1-year chart looks me. TCG Player definitely does not have a lot of data for this. Therefore, let's look at eBay data instead. It is about $300, give or take. If you remember from last week, I had mentioned that secret rares were a highlight. They still kind of are. They haven't really moved negative, so to speak. This Mewtwo Mew card, it is trending upward. When it had come out, it had started strong, but then there was a steady decline, and then it was somewhat stagnant for a time. But pretty much ever since last year, a year ago, especially right here, like this, it has actually gained in popularity. So definitely a card to watch. Other secret rares that were mentioned, other secret rares here, as well as alt arts. I should also mention that. Alt arts. We have a Mimikyu GX secret rare here, as well as a Gengar and Mimikyu, then another Gengar Mimikyu, Slowpoke Psyduck, Reshiram GX, a lot of GXs. They are definitely popping up here. Even on the next page, there are other GXs, alt arts, secret rares, Charizard GX, secret rare, Giratina from Lost Origin, Gengar Mimikyu again, which we're going to talk about, Snorlax secret rare, which is the same one from last week, I believe. All these GXs, rainbow rares, alt arts. Granted, not all GXs, alt arts, and secret rares, but definitely some of them. And yes, Gengar Mimikyu GX. For some reason, Gengar Mimikyu GX is showing up quite a bit, such as this Gengar Mimikyu GX, and then there's this one that was a secret rare, and then this one again. All of these Gengar Mimikyu GXs. Not sure what's going on, but there's been quite a bit of price movement for these cards. And in general, they have been trending up. So let's do the 1 year. Yeah, 1 year is crazy. A year ago it was at about $58, at least on TCG Player, and now it is at about $150, $160. This Gengar Mimikyu, the secret rare, has also seen a price spike. And again, it happened at about a year ago, or a little bit more than a year ago. Okay, definitely like 2 years ago. There has been a slow, steady climb upwards. On around September 2024 was at $87, and now it is at $277 about. So pretty impressive climb, and there's probably still more room for it to climb, but I don't know, because there's already been a pretty steep climb right here from July 2025 to now, right here. This is a pretty steep climb. It's like people were piling into this card during the latter part of last year. So not sure if there's enough juice to keep it going. There could be a dip. I don't know if there's going to be a crash, but there could be a dip, obviously. But right now, this is where it is, at about $300. Now looking at this Gengar Mimikyu GX, which is even more pricey. It is at about $1,000. On the chart, it is at about $1,200. Again, lots of variation for these high price cards. And this one definitely seems to have been trending upward at the same time as the secret rare one right here. Almost the same time, but definitely the same year in 2024, late 2024. And the trend is still upward. Granted, there was a bit of a dip between September 2025 and November 2025, and then it started trending upward again. So there was this buying spree in the last 2 months or the last month of 2025, which I think is similar to, which is somewhat similar to the secret rare, where there was this buying spree. Granted, the buying spree for the secret rare happened a little sooner in 2025. So yeah, looks like all these Gengar Mimikyu cards, they're just going up simultaneously Not saying it's the same person buying these cards, but definitely looks like there's interest in them. Not sure why, but these are definitely cards to watch. Now, I'm not going to get into all the other ones here because, again, these numbers, these price movements, very small. So what does that mean? Well, from Gen 7 to Gen 9, the market is pretty stagnant. It's not really moving up. It's not really moving down. People are still buying and selling stuff, but it's not like there's this rush to buy cards. Now, I don't know if this means there's going to be a crash or a dip or a skyrocketing boom. To me, it seems like everybody's kind of holding their breath and waiting for the next set. That's literally what it seems like. A lot of folks are probably saving their money or collecting casually. It looks like everybody probably bought everything they needed in December. And now it's, a January lull until the next set. That's pretty much all that I see from this overall chart. The next thing I'm going to cover is different sets, but that is going to be put in a different video because this one's already long enough. I'm only going to cover Gen 9 sets, and I will post that after this one.